An empty food bowl sat frozen on the porch of Nathan Cord's old home, untouched beneath a layer of fresh snow. Retired Navy SEAL Nathan Cord thought the silence meant his German Shepherd was truly gone. But the collar tag was missing. The dog's old mat had vanished, and the shed behind the house wore a lock that looked far too new. His wife said Diesel had run away. Yet beneath the floorboards, Nathan found yellow and black fur where no one had cared to clean deep enough. That night, from the locked shed, came one thin metallic sound, like a name tag moving in the dark. If what Diesel does next touches your heart, don't leave just yet. Tell us where you're watching from tonight. By the time Nathan Cord came home, winter had nearly finished with Montana, but it had not yet let go. A thin skin of snow clung to the porch roof, the fence rails, and the frozen weeds along the driveway. The sky hung low and gray over the small town, pressing down on the houses like an old hand. Wind moved through the bare cottonwoods behind the property, dry and cold, making the branches click together like bones. Nathan sat in the passenger seat of the transport van for several seconds after it stopped. He was 55 years old, a retired Navy SEAL, 6'1", broad-shouldered, and still solid in the way men remain solid when discipline has outlived youth. His body had the firm, controlled strength of a man who had spent years training and still refused to surrender himself to age, though 2 years of spinal rehabilitation had changed the way he moved. He was not broken in a visible way, not at first glance. His face was clean-shaven, sharply cut, handsome in a rugged American way, with a strong jaw, deep-set eyes, and neatly trimmed silvering hair in a clean undercut. He wore a fitted, long-sleeved green camouflage outfit, crisp and close to the body, the kind of clothing that made him look as though even pain had to stand at attention around him. But his eyes gave him away. They were dark, steady, and deeply tired. The driver asked if he needed help. Nathan shook his head. No, I've got it. He stepped down slowly. Cold struck his lower back and tightened there. He paused, not because he wanted anyone to notice, but because pain had become a thing he negotiated with in silence. Then he straightened, adjusted his shoulders, and looked at the house. It was the same white farmhouse with the green shutters, the same porch steps he had repaired 12 years earlier, the same brass bell near the door that Diesel used to bump with his nose whenever he wanted to go outside. Nathan stared at that bell. It did not move. No deep bark rolled from inside. No paws thundered across the wood floor. No yellow and black German Shepherd came charging down the hallway with his ears high and his whole body trembling from the effort of staying disciplined. Nathan reached the porch and placed one hand on the railing. For 2 years, through surgeries, nerve pain, sleepless nights, and the cruel work of learning how to walk without trusting his own spine, he had imagined this moment one way. The door would open. Diesel would appear. Older, maybe grayer around the muzzle, but there. Alive. Waiting. The front door opened before Nathan knocked. Carol Cord stood inside the warm yellow light of the entryway. She was 52, slender, with shoulder-length light brown hair brushed neatly around a face that had once been soft in an effortless way. Now that softness seemed managed, held in place by practice. She wore a cream turtleneck sweater, pale gray slacks, and brown flats. Her blue eyes looked damp, but not quite from tears. There was something careful in her posture, something controlled in the way she smiled. "Nathan?" she said. He nodded once. "Carol." For a moment, they looked like two people meeting at the end of a long illness, unsure whether they were husband and wife or witnesses to what remained. She stepped aside. "Come in. It's freezing." Nathan entered and stopped. The house was clean, too clean. The air smelled of lemon polish, laundry soap, and recently opened windows. The entry rug had been replaced. The old mud tray near the door was gone. The narrow scratch marks Diesel had left years ago along the baseboard had been sanded and painted over. Nathan listened. Nothing. No breathing from the hallway. No low whine from behind the kitchen door. No collar tag clicking against a metal food bowl. Carol closed the door behind him. "You must be exhausted," she said. "I made soup. The doctor said warm meals would help with the medication schedule." Nathan did not move. "Where's Diesel?" The question landed softly, but Carol's fingers tightened around the edge of the door. She turned toward the kitchen. "Nathan." He looked at her back. "Where is he?" Carol walked to the sink. A clean glass sat beside it. She picked it up and began wiping it with a dish towel, though there was nothing on it. Her hands moved in small, neat circles. He's gone. Nathan said nothing. Carol kept wiping the glass. He left last year. I looked everywhere. I called the shelters, asked around town, put up notices. He was depressed after you went away. He kept waiting by the door. Then one night, he just disappeared. Nathan's face did not change. But inside him, something old and sharp lifted its head. Diesel did not disappear. Diesel had been 6 years old when Nathan last saw him, a large yellow and black German shepherd with a deep chest, strong shoulders, alert ears, and amber-brown eyes that seemed to understand tone before words. He had been trained, yes, but training was not what made him loyal. Loyalty lived deeper than command. Diesel had once refused food for nearly 2 days while Nathan lay unconscious after surgery, until a nurse finally moved his bed close enough for the dog to rest his muzzle against Nathan's hand. Diesel could wait through hunger. Diesel could wait through pain. Diesel did not leave. Carol placed the glass down carefully. I know how much he meant to you, she said. I kept some things for a while, but I thought seeing them would only make this harder. Nathan looked toward the corner near the back door. Diesel's water bowl was gone. The thick brown mat where he used to sleep was gone. The framed photo in the hallway. Nathan in fatigues, Diesel pressed against his leg, both of them squinting in bright desert sun, was no longer on the wall. The empty nail still remained. Nathan walked to it and touched the tiny mark in the paint. Carol watched him. I was trying to help, she said. He let his hand fall. You took down his picture. I took down a lot of things. He wasn't a thing. Carol flinched, but only slightly. The silence that followed was colder than the weather outside. Nathan wanted to ask more. He wanted to turn toward her and demand dates, names, proof. The exact hour Diesel had vanished. But his body was tired, and the house seemed to tilt faintly around him. 2 years in medical rooms had taught him that strength did not always announce itself by standing longer. Sometimes it survived by not falling. Carol stepped closer. You should sit. He looked at her hands. They were still trembling. Not much. Enough. Nathan sat at the kitchen table because his back demanded it, not because she had asked. Carol set soup in front of him. He did not touch it. His eyes kept moving around the kitchen, measuring absence. A man trained to survive hostile places learns that emptiness has shape. Diesel's absence had shape. It sat where the bowl should have been. It lay where the mat should have warmed the floor. It stared back from the blank place on the wall where their photo used to hang. About a third of the way through the evening, Nathan noticed something strange. The brass bell by the back door had been tied up with a piece of pale string, looped around the handle so it could not swing. He stared at it. Carol noticed. Oh, she said too quickly. The sound bothered me after a while. The wind kept moving it. Nathan knew the sound of that bell. It was not loud. Diesel had learned to nudge it gently, once, then sit and wait. It was one of the first things he had done in this house that made Carol laugh years ago. Now the bell had been silenced. Not removed. Silenced. Nathan looked from the bell to Carol. For the first time since stepping inside, he understood something with a cold clarity that settled under his ribs. Carol was not afraid the house would remind him of Diesel. She was afraid the house would remember Diesel without her permission. He said nothing. He only lowered his eyes to the table. Carol mistook the silence for surrender. You need rest, she said softly. Maybe he did. But rest did not come. That night, Nathan lay in the bedroom that had once belonged to both of them, and felt like a guest in a museum of his own life. The sheets smelled new. The dresser had been cleared. Even the old boot scuff near the closet had been polished away. He woke at 3:17 in the morning. He always woke at 3:17. In the dream, there was smoke, a broken radio, and a voice calling his name through static. A teammate pinned somewhere Nathan could not reach. A decision made in seconds and carried for years. Pull back. Save the men who could still be saved. Leave one behind because the world had become math and fire and screaming. The order had been correct. That had never helped. Nathan sat up, breathing hard, one hand pressed against his lower back. For a moment he expected weight against his knee, a warm muzzle, a quiet breath. Diesel had always known when the dream found him. The dog never barked, never licked his face. He simply came close enough for Nathan to feel something alive that did not judge him. But the room was empty. Then he heard barking. Not from inside the house, from the yard next door. Nathan turned his head toward the window. Outside, moonlight lay thin over the frozen grass. Along the fence line stood the old Labrador that belonged to Agnes Whitmore, the elderly neighbor who had lived beside them for nearly 20 years. The dog was pale yellow, heavy in the hips, gray around the muzzle, with the stiff-legged patience of an animal that had grown old watching human mistakes repeat themselves. The Labrador stood facing Nathan's backyard, not toward the road, not toward the woods, toward the old shed behind the house. He barked once, waited, barked again. It was not the frantic bark of a dog seeing a stranger. It was lower, stranger, almost mournful, as if he were answering something only he could hear. Nathan pushed the blanket aside and stood. Pain tightened across his back, but he ignored it. He crossed to the window and looked down. The shed stood black against the snow, its roof bowed, its door closed. A new lock glinted faintly on the latch. Nathan frowned. Behind him, the bedroom door opened. Carol stood there in the hallway, wrapped in a pale robe over her cream sweater and gray slacks. Her hair still perfectly in place despite the hour. She should have looked sleepy. She did not. She looked alert, as if she had been awake before he moved. "What are you doing?" she asked. Nathan did not turn. "Agnes's dog is barking at the shed." Carol's voice softened immediately. "He does that sometimes. He's old." Nathan watched the Labrador bark again. "Not like that." Carol stepped closer. "Don't go out there." Now he turned. The words had come too fast. Carol seemed to realize it. She adjusted her tone. "The floor in that shed is rotten. You just got home. Your back. My back isn't what you're worried about." Her face changed then, not much, but enough. The soft lines hardened for half a second before she lowered her eyes. "Nathan, please, don't start doing this tonight." "Doing what?" "Looking for ghosts." He held her gaze. Diesel wasn't a ghost. Carol's mouth trembled. "I know." But she did not sound like she knew. She sounded like someone who had practiced knowing. Nathan walked past her into the hallway. He did not go outside. Not yet. His body was not ready, and some part of him understood that the truth, whatever it was, had waited this long. It could wait until daylight. Near the kitchen, he stopped. A thin draft moved under the back door. He looked down and saw something caught in a crack between two floorboards near the threshold. He bent slowly. Pain burned white along his spine, but he reached anyway. Between his fingers came 3 short strands of fur, yellow and black, Diesel's colors. Nathan held them in his palm. For the first time since coming home, something inside him did not collapse. It steadied. It was almost nothing. A few hairs. A trace. A fragment any reasonable person could dismiss. But to Nathan, it meant one thing. Diesel had been here longer than Carol wanted him to believe. Behind him, Carol said nothing. Outside, the old Labrador stopped barking. Then, from the direction of the shed, through the cold and the dark, came a tiny sound. Metal touching wood. Thin, dry, lonely. Like an old name tag swinging where no dog should have been. Nathan closed his fingers around the fur and stared toward the back door. And for the first time that night, he was no longer sure the house was empty. Morning came without warmth. The sky over the Montana town was a dull sheet of pewter, and the snow in Nathan's backyard had hardened overnight into a thin crust that cracked under the weight of birds. Frost clung to the fence wire. The old cottonwoods behind the property stood bare and still, their dark branches reaching over the yard like hands that had forgotten how to pray. Nathan Cord stood at the kitchen window with a cup of coffee cooling untouched in his hand. He had slept very little. Carol had moved through the morning as if nothing had changed. She had made toast, set out his medication, folded a dish towel twice, and asked whether his back was worse in the cold. Her voice was soft. Her face was composed. She looked like a woman trying to restore order after a difficult homecoming. But Nathan no longer trusted order, not in that house. His eyes stayed on the shed behind the property. It sat beneath the pines, half swallowed by shadow, an old wooden structure with a sagging roof and warped siding. Nathan remembered building shelves in there years ago, Diesel lying in the doorway with his front paws crossed, watching him work like a supervisor who had doubts about civilian craftsmanship. Back then, the shed had smelled of oil, pine dust, garden tools, and dog fur. Now it looked sealed. The lock on the door was wrong. Everything else about the shed was old. Rust on the hinges, moss darkening one side of the roof, swollen boards along the bottom where snowmelt had soaked in for too many winters. But the padlock hanging from the latch was new, bright steel, clean enough to catch the weak morning light. Nathan stared at it until Carol's voice came from behind him. You should eat something. He turned. Carol Cord stood near the counter. Still wearing the cream turtleneck sweater and pale gray slacks, she seemed to have chosen like armor. Her light brown hair was brushed neatly around her face. In daylight, Nathan could see the tiredness under her eyes, but also the practiced softness in her expression. She was slender, controlled, and careful with every movement, the kind of woman who could make worry look like kindness and silence look like sacrifice. I'm not hungry, Nathan said. You need to keep your strength up. He looked back at the shed. When did you replace the lock? Carol paused. Only half a second. Enough. The old one rusted through, she said. Nathan nodded slowly. Did it? Yes. He did not accuse her. Not yet. Accusations had a way of warning people where to hide the truth. Carol picked up her purse from the chair. I'm going into town. Pharmacy, grocery store. Is there anything you need? Nathan looked at her. My dog. Her face tightened, then softened too quickly. Nathan. He turned away from her. No. Nothing else. Carol stood there a moment, as if waiting for him to apologize for the cruelty of wanting what had been taken from him. When he did not, she left through the front door. Nathan listened to her car start, idle, then pull away down the driveway. Only when the sound disappeared did he set the cold coffee on the counter. He moved through the mudroom with deliberate care. His back was stiff from the night, and pain ran in a thin line down his right hip when he bent to open the lower cabinet. He found the old toolbox beneath a stack of folded tarps. It was heavier than he remembered. Or maybe he had become better at hiding weakness from other people than from himself. He carried it outside. The cold entered his lungs like glass. Each step across the backyard demanded attention. The snow crust broke under his boots. His body wanted to guard the spine, to move carefully, to avoid twisting. Nathan obeyed only enough to stay upright. At the shed door, he set the toolbox down and looked again at the new lock. He did not try to rip it off. That was the old Nathan, the man people expected when they heard Navy SEAL and imagined force first, thought second. That man still lived somewhere inside him, but he was not the one Nathan trusted anymore. Pain had taught him patience. Guilt had taught him the cost of acting too fast. He took out a small screwdriver and a pair of worn pliers. The latch screws were old. The lock was new, but the wood around it was tired. He worked slowly, jaw tight, pausing twice when a burning spasm crawled across his lower back. The second time, he had to brace one hand against the shed wall and close his eyes until the pain passed. A crow called from the fence post. Nathan opened his eyes. Not today, he muttered. The final screw loosened. The latch shifted enough for him to pull the door open a few inches. A stale smell breathed out. Cold wood, old dust, damp straw, and underneath it, faint but unmistakable, something that made his chest tighten. Dog. Not fresh. Not strong. But there, Nathan lowered himself carefully and looked through the narrow gap near the bottom of the door. Inside, dim gray light fell across the floorboards. A rake leaned against the wall. A broken flower pot lay on its side. A coil of rope hung from a nail. Then he saw the marks. Deep scratches scored the inside of the lower door. 4 lines. Parallel. Repeated. Dug into the wood from within. Nathan reached through the gap and touched them. His fingers found rough grooves where claws had torn at the boards. He stopped breathing for a second. Diesel had been here. Not wandering through the yard, not sleeping in the shade, not leaving of his own free will. Here, inside, trying to get out. Nathan sat back on his heels too quickly, and pain shot up his spine. He gripped the doorframe until it passed. His mind refused the image at first. Diesel, large and loyal, trapped in the dark shed. Diesel waiting for a command. Diesel wondering why the door did not open. Diesel scratching not because he was wild, but because he was still trying to come home from inside his own home. Nathan swallowed hard. No, he whispered. Not because he doubted it, because he did not want to understand it. Near the corner of the floor, something black caught beneath a splintered board. Nathan reached in and worked it loose. A strip of leather. Old, dark, cracked at one end. His thumb moved over the surface. He knew it before his mind named it. Diesel's spare collar had been black leather, plain and sturdy, because Nathan never trusted decorative things with working dogs. This was not the whole collar, just a torn piece. The tag was gone. Nathan closed his fist around it. For a moment, the shed seemed to breathe around him. Then he heard tires on gravel, Carol's car. Too soon. Nathan shoved the leather strip into his pocket, stood with difficulty, and pulled the shed door half closed. Carol came around the side of the house with a paper pharmacy bag in one hand. She had not gone to the grocery store. Her eyes moved first to the shed, then to the toolbox, then to Nathan's face. Her voice dropped. "What are you doing?" Nathan did not step away from the door, looking. "For what?" He looked at her steadily. "A dog you said walked away." Carol's face went pale at the edges. She shifted the pharmacy bag from one hand to the other. "You had no right to break into that shed." "It's my shed. You just got home from a spinal injury. Do you understand how reckless this is?" Nathan glanced at the door behind him. "You're worried about the floor?" "I'm worried about you." "No," he said quietly. "You're not." Carol took a breath as if struck. For one strange second, Nathan thought she might confess something. Not everything. Maybe just one small truth. A date. A name. A reason. Instead, her eyes flicked past him. Not to the scratches. Not to the broken latch. To the far left corner of the shed floor, where one board bowed slightly upward near the wall. Nathan saw the look. Carol recovered quickly, but not quickly enough. "Come inside," she said. "Please." He let the silence stretch. Then he picked up the toolbox. "Not yet." Carol's mouth tightened. "Nathan, this isn't healthy." He walked past her, slow but steady. "No," he said. "It isn't." By afternoon, the house had settled into a silence that felt less like peace than waiting. Carol stayed upstairs for almost an hour. Nathan heard drawers open and close. Once, he heard her on the phone, voice low enough that he could not make out words. When she came down again, she acted gentler than before, which Nathan liked even less. He was in the living room when there was a knock at the side door. Carol froze. Nathan looked at her. She smoothed the front of her sweater. "I'll get it." But Nathan was already standing. The woman on the porch was small and narrow-shouldered, bundled against the cold in a moss-green cardigan under a long gray coat. Her brown skirt reached below her knees, and a soft gray scarf was wrapped twice around her neck. Her hair was white and pinned in a low bun, though several wisps had escaped around a face lined by age, weather, and a lifetime of noticing things people wished she would not. Her eyes were pale and sharp. Agnes Whitmore had lived next door to Nathan for nearly 20 years. She had always been kind, but never intrusive. She brought pies after surgeries, casseroles after funerals, and silence when silence was the better gift. She was 70 now, maybe older, in the way winter made everyone look older, and she carried a covered plate with both hands. Her old Labrador stood beside her on the porch. He was a pale yellow dog with a broad head, cloudy eyes, and a gray muzzle. Age had thickened his body and stiffened his hips, but there was still dignity in the way he stood. His name was Cooper, if Nathan remembered correctly. Diesel used to tolerate him with the solemn patience of a younger soldier humoring an old sergeant. Cooper looked past Nathan into the house. Then he whined. Agnes heard it and lowered her eyes. "I heard you were back," she said. "Brought bread." Nathan stepped aside. "Come in, Agnes." Carol's voice came from behind him. "That's kind of you, Mrs. Whitmore." Agnes smiled politely at Carol, but the smile did not reach her eyes. She entered the kitchen and set the plate on the table. Cooper remained outside on the porch, nose lifted, body tense despite his age. For a few minutes, everyone played the old game of small towns. Weather, roads, the pharmacy being slow, the heater at church acting up again. Then Agnes looked toward the back door and quietly asked, "She's still telling you Diesel ran off?" Carol's face changed. Nathan looked at Agnes. "What did you say?" Agnes pressed her lips together. Fear moved across her face, followed by shame. Carol stepped forward. "Mrs. Whitmore, I don't think this is the time." Agnes did not look at her. "That's what I told myself before," she said. "That it wasn't the time." The room went still. Nathan pulled out a chair. "Sit down." Agnes sat, hands folded tightly in her lap. Up close, Nathan could see they were trembling. She was not a woman built for confrontation. She was a widow who lived alone, who locked her doors at dusk, who checked the window when unknown trucks slowed near her mailbox. But something had pushed her past fear. "I didn't know for sure," she said. "That's what I kept telling myself. I didn't know for sure." Carol's voice sharpened. "You saw nothing improper." Agnes finally looked at her. "I saw enough to stop sleeping right." Nathan remained standing. "What did you see?" Agnes swallowed. "It was months after you went to the hospital. Bad rain that night. Cold rain. Cooper was barking so hard I thought he'd hurt himself. I looked out back and saw a white truck pulled up near your shed." Carol's hand went to the counter. Agnes continued. "Carol told me later Diesel had become difficult. Dangerous," she said. Said he needed special handling. I wanted to believe her. She was your wife. You were gone. I thought maybe grief had changed him. Nathan's jaw tightened. And the truck? There was a man, Agnes said. Tall, dark coat. I didn't know him then. He came around more after that. Carol said he helped with financial papers. Carol said, this is gossip. Agnes's voice trembled, but she did not stop. His name was Marcus Vale. The name entered the kitchen like cold air under a door. Nathan repeated it once in his mind, not aloud. Marcus Vale. Carol stared at Agnes with something close to warning. Nathan noticed. Agnes saw him notice. Re-huck. Then Cooper, still outside on the porch, made a low sound none of them had ever heard from him before. Not a bark. Not a growl. A thin, grieving whine. Agnes turned toward the door, and her face folded with pain. He only makes that sound in one place now, she whispered. By your shed. No one spoke. The old dog pressed his nose to the bottom of the porch door, sniffed once, then backed away as if the scent itself had hurt him. Nathan felt the strip of leather in his pocket. For the first time that day, the mystery did not feel like a puzzle. It felt like a witness that had been waiting too long. Agnes wiped her palms on her skirt. I had a trail camera out by my chicken run. Cheap little thing. I use it because foxes kept getting in. It catches motion when it wants to, misses it when it doesn't. That night, it caught part of the yard. Carol stepped in. Nathan, you don't need to listen to this. Nathan did not look away from Agnes. Do you still have it? Agnes nodded. Not the original card. My grandson helped me copy it before it got overwritten. It's blurry. Rain all over the lens. You can't see faces clear. She reached into her cardigan pocket and took out a small plastic flash drive. I should have brought it sooner. Nathan looked at the drive but did not take it right away. Why didn't you? Agnes's eyes filled. Because I'm old, she said. Because I live alone. Because Carol said the papers were legal and that dog was being taken someplace proper. Because people in this town know how to make a lonely woman look foolish when she asks questions she can't prove. Carol looked away. Agnes pushed the flash drive across the table. I don't know exactly what I saw, she said, but I know that dog didn't leave the way she told it. Nathan took the drive. It was small, black, ordinary, but his hand felt heavier after he held it. Carol's voice had gone quiet. You're making a mistake. Nathan looked at her then. No, he said. I made my mistake when I believed silence meant nothing happened. Carol's face tightened, but she said no more. Agnes stood to leave. At the door, she paused and looked back at Nathan. Diesel didn't act scared of that man, she said. That's what bothered me most. He acted like he knew exactly what that man was. Nathan's fingers closed around the flash drive. After Agnes left, the house felt smaller. Carol went upstairs without another word. Nathan waited until her footsteps stopped. Then he took his laptop from the old desk in the den. It was still where he had left it 2 years earlier, but the screen had been wiped clean of dust. That detail bothered him more than it should have. He plugged in the flash drive. The video opened slowly. At first, there was only rain. A gray blur. The corner of Agnes's chicken fence. The dark line of Nathan's backyard beyond it. Then motion. Headlights smeared across the frame. A white truck back near the shed. The image skipped. Carol appeared as a pale shape under an umbrella. Another figure stood beside her. Taller, dark coat, face hidden by rain and angle. Then something moved low in the frame, large, yellow and black. Nathan leaned closer. The video stuttered. Rain distorted everything. There was no sound. But Diesel was there. His body moved slowly, too slowly. Not fighting, not walking freely either. His head turned once toward the house. Nathan pressed pause. The still image froze badly. Blurred by weather, but it was enough. Diesel's ears were up. His body angled toward the back door, as if waiting for Nathan to come out. Nathan closed his eyes. The guilt hit without warning. Not rational guilt. Not fair guilt. The older kind. The kind that did not care what doctors, timelines, or hospital records said. He had not been there. Again, when he opened his eyes, the video had gone dark at the end of the clip. Nathan sat very still. Outside, evening was coming on. Carol remained upstairs. The shed waited. Nathan should have waited until morning. He knew that. His back knew it too. Every step back outside would cost him. But there are moments when the body's wisdom loses to the soul's need to confirm that grief is not madness. He put on his boots and coat, slipped the strip of leather into his pocket, and went outside with a flashlight. The cold had sharpened after sunset. He reached the shed, opened the loosened latch, and stepped in. The flashlight beam swept across tools, old shelves, a cracked plastic bin, dead leaves blown in through gaps in the wall. He avoided the scratched door. He had already seen enough there. Instead, he went to the corner Carol had looked at. The board was slightly raised. Nathan knelt slowly, breathing through the pain. He slid the screwdriver beneath the edge and worked it upward. The wood gave a soft groan. For one terrible second, he feared what might be beneath it. He did not know whether he could survive finding something final. But there were no bones, no body, no ending. Only a small stiff scrap of dark leather caught on a rusty nail under the board. Nathan lifted it carefully. It looked like part of a glove, dry, torn, marked at the edge by two curved punctures. Like teeth had closed around it and ripped it free. Nathan held it under the flashlight. Diesel had not simply been taken from this place. At some point, even hurt, even trapped, even alone, he had fought. Nathan stood in the cold shed, the torn leather in one hand and Diesel's broken collar strip in the other, while the wind moved through the boards around him. For the first time since coming home, he did not feel only grief. He felt a direction. And somewhere deep beneath that direction, a question waited with teeth of its own. Whose glove had Diesel bitten that night? Nathan did not go to the market because he wanted answers from strangers. He went because silence inside his own house had started to feel rehearsed. By mid-morning, the town had begun to move under a hard gray sky. Snow had been pushed to the edges of the sidewalks in dirty ridges, and pickup trucks rolled slowly down Main Street with their tires hissing through meltwater. The butcher shop sat between a hardware store and a small pharmacy. Its red sign faded by years of Montana weather. Nathan parked across the street and sat behind the wheel for a moment. His back ached from the night before. The work in the shed had cost him more than he wanted to admit. Pain sat low in his spine, patient and familiar, as if it knew he would eventually have to listen. But the strip of Diesel's old collar in his coat pocket made rest impossible. He crossed the street slowly, shoulders squared, boots steady on the slush. Inside the butcher shop, warm air smelled of smoked meat, cold steel, sawdust, and old wood. The bell above the door rang once. Earl Haskins looked up from behind the counter. Earl was 63, broad in the stomach and thick through the shoulders, with a red face weathered by cold mornings and long years under fluorescent shop lights. He wore a red and black plaid shirt beneath a heavy white butcher's apron, dark jeans, and black rubber boots. His hands were large, scarred, and blunt-fingered, the hands of a man who had spent his life cutting cleanly and speaking poorly. He was not cruel, but he had the guarded manner of a person who disliked emotional conversations because they asked for more than facts. When he saw Nathan, the knife in his hand paused. "Well," Earl said, "didn't know you were back." "Yesterday." Earl set the knife down. "You look better than folks said you would. That's not saying much." A faint smile came and went on Earl's face. "No, guess not." Nathan moved closer to the counter. The glass case between them was filled with wrapped cuts of beef and pork, rows arranged with the kind of care Earl never wasted on conversation. Nathan did not ease into it. "You remember Diesel." Earl's eyes shifted down. That was answer enough. "Hard dog to forget," Earl said. "Always sat by the door. Never begged. Just looked at me like he was judging the quality of my bones." Nathan almost smiled. Almost. "I need to know what happened." Earl wiped his hands on his apron, though they were already clean. "You should talk to Carol." "I did." "Then I don't know what I can add." Nathan studied him. Earl had never been a coward. Not exactly. But small towns trained people to treat private pain like a fence line. Everyone knew where it was, and everyone pretended not to cross it. Nathan took the strip of black leather from his pocket and placed it on the counter. Earl looked at it. His face changed. "Found that where?" he asked. "In my shed." Earl exhaled through his nose. "Nathan, tell me what you saw." For several seconds, the only sound was the hum of the refrigerator cases. Then Earl leaned both hands on the counter. "Carol came in, maybe. I don't know. 9 or 10 months after you went to the hospital. Asked if I knew anyone who took in big dogs. Said Diesel had gotten hard to manage." Nathan said nothing. "I told her that didn't sound right," Earl continued. "That dog came here every Saturday with you for years. Never once snapped, never stole food, never even leaned on the glass." "What did she say?" "Said he wasn't the same after you left. Said he growled at visitors. Said she couldn't sleep with him watching doors all night." Nathan looked past Earl toward the hanging rows of cured sausage in the back. That all? Earl's jaw worked. No. Nathan waited. A few weeks after that, I saw him. The room seemed to narrow. Where? Parking lot behind the feed store. White truck. Rainy day. I was loading an order for a ranch hand. Diesel was in the back seat, or trying to be. There was a man holding the leash. Tall fella. Dark coat. Not from around here, not then. Did Diesel fight? Earl shook his head slowly. That's the part that bothered me. Nathan's hand closed at his side. He didn't fight? No, he was quiet. Too quiet. Not like a calm dog. Like a dog waiting for the right person to tell him what to do. Earl looked at Nathan now, fully. He turned his head toward the road that leads to your place. I remember that. Stared that direction until the truck door shut. Nathan felt something inside him sink with unbearable precision. Diesel had not run. Diesel had looked homeward. Earl lowered his voice. I should ask more. Nathan put the leather strip back into his pocket. Yes, he said. Earl took the word without defending himself. That made Nathan respect him more and resent him less. I'm sorry, Earl said. Nathan nodded once, because that was all he had to give. Outside, the wind had picked up. Nathan stood on the sidewalk for a moment after leaving the shop, watching people move through their ordinary errands. A woman carried groceries. A man scraped ice from a windshield. A child in a red hat dragged one mitten through the dirty snow. The world had continued while Diesel disappeared. That felt obscene. When Nathan returned home, Carol's car was in the driveway. He had not expected her to be gone. She was too careful now to leave him alone for long. Inside, she was in the kitchen, arranging mail into neat stacks. You went out, she said, to town. You should have told me. I would have driven. I can drive. I know. Her smile was thin. I just worry. Nathan looked at the mail in her hands. Most of it was old junk, advertisements, insurance notices, local flyers. But she was sorting with too much focus, as though paper could protect her. He walked past her to the dining room. The old table still stood there, dark oak, scarred along one edge where Diesel had once bumped it hard during a thunderstorm and knocked over a vase. Carol had polished that scar so carefully it was almost gone. Nathan pulled open the top drawer. What are you looking for? Carol asked. Receipts. For what? For the year my dog vanished. Carol's face went still. Nathan did not look at her. He removed placemats, napkins, old batteries, a half-used roll of tape. The drawer seemed ordinary, too ordinary. Then he noticed the lining paper at the bottom had been replaced. One corner lifted slightly. Carol stepped forward. Nathan, stop. He slid a fingernail beneath the edge and pulled. Under the lining was a folded document, thin and creased. Carol did not speak. Nathan opened it. At the top was the name of a private animal transfer facility 30 miles outside town. It was not called a sale. That made it worse somehow. Owner surrender. Transfer fee, $800. Dog, male German Shepherd, black and tan, trained. Reason, reported aggression, owner unable to manage. Signature, Carol Cord. Nathan read it once, then again. The words blurred, cleared, and became crueler. Reported aggression. Owner unable to manage. He could almost see Diesel reduced to those lines. Not a partner. Not a living soul that had waited beside hospital beds and guarded doorways and breathed through Nathan's nightmares. Just a problem filed under a polite phrase. Carol whispered, I can explain. Nathan looked up. No, he said. You can start. Carol's eyes shone quickly, as if tears had been waiting close to the surface. I was alone. He said nothing. I was alone in this house for months, Nathan. Then a year. Then longer. You don't know what that was like. No, he said. I don't. Diesel wouldn't listen to me. He watched me like I was trespassing. Every night, he lay by the front door. Every sound, he got up. Every car, he looked. He wasn't living. He was waiting for a man the doctors wouldn't promise would ever come home. Nathan's grip tightened on the paper. Carol's voice broke. But there was anger beneath the break. I could not breathe in this house. Do you understand that? He made every room feel like a memorial. Like I had already lost you, but wasn't allowed to say it. For one dangerous moment, Nathan felt the edge of pity. Not forgiveness. Pity. Because he knew something about waiting in rooms where hope had become punishment. He knew loneliness could distort the heart until wrong things looked necessary. Then he looked back at the receipt. Reported aggression, he said. Carol wiped at her cheek. He growled at people. At who? At visitors. Which visitors? She looked away. The answer stood between them without being spoken. Nathan folded the paper carefully. You made him dangerous on paper. I did what I had to do, to get rid of him, to survive. The word was too large for what she had done. Nathan placed the receipt on the table. You didn't surrender Diesel because you were afraid of him. Carol's mouth tightened. You don't know what I was afraid of. No, Nathan said. But I'm starting to know who. The kitchen went silent. Carol's tears stopped almost as quickly as they had started. That frightened him more than the crying. Nathan, she said carefully, you are tired. You just came home. You are digging through drawers, breaking into sheds, questioning neighbors, talking about Diesel like he was. Like he was what? She hesitated. Like he was a person. Nathan stared at her. He was better than most. Carol closed her eyes. That is exactly what I mean. You need rest. You need to talk to someone. This kind of fixation after trauma. There it is. What? The new story. She frowned. Nathan stepped closer, not threatening, just present. Yesterday Diesel ran away. This morning the shed was unsafe. Now I'm unstable. Carol's face hardened. I am worried about you. No, he said. You are building a reason not to answer me. For the first time, Carol looked truly angry. You think you get to come back after 2 years and judge what I had to carry? Nathan's voice stayed low. I think you signed my dog away and called him dangerous. Carol's hand struck the edge of the table, not hard, but enough to make the receipt shift. He was not your dog alone. He was registered under my name. You were not here. The sentence hit harder than she knew, or maybe exactly as hard as she intended. Nathan felt the old wound open, not in his back, deeper, the place where the mission lived, the place where a voice still called through static, and Nathan still made the decision that saved 4 men and left 1 behind. You were not here. The words became something else. You were not there. You left. Again. Carol saw the change in his face and softened immediately, which told him she had seen where the blade went in. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't mean. Yes, Nathan said quietly. You did. He turned away before anger could take the shape she wanted it to have. Rehook. Then, as he lifted the receipt from the table, a second slip of paper fell from inside the fold. It was not from the animal facility. It was a handwritten note on pale blue stationery, 3 lines only, in Carol's neat script. M says this must be done before N comes home. No names, no explanation, no date except a small month written in the corner. But Nathan did not need the whole truth to feel the floor tilt beneath him. Carol moved too quickly. Nathan, give me that. He held the note away from her. For a few seconds, the kitchen became something colder than a room. It became a border. On one side stood Carol, breathing fast, eyes bright with panic. On the other stood Nathan, holding the first piece of proof that Diesel had not been removed because of fear alone. Someone else had been part of it. Someone Carol called M. Nathan folded the note with the receipt. Carol's voice changed. It became lower, more controlled. You have no idea what you're walking into. He looked at her. What does that mean? It means you are not well enough for this. That's not an answer. No, she said. It's a warning. Nathan felt the old version of himself stir. The man who could read threat in tone and posture before weapons appeared. But there was no battlefield here, no enemy uniform. Just a woman in a cream sweater standing in a kitchen that no longer smelled like home. Then Carol said the sentence that opened the next door. I had no choice after what happened with the land. Nathan went still. What land? Carol's face emptied. A small, terrible silence followed, the kind of silence people make when they have stepped on the truth without meaning to. Nathan did not move. Carol, he said, what land? She turned away and began gathering the mail again with shaking hands. You misunderstood me. No, you're exhausted. What land? She pressed a stack of envelopes flat. Please stop. What did you do? Carol looked back at him then, and for one breath he saw something behind the sadness and fear. Calculation. Then it vanished. I did what I could while you were gone, she said. Nathan waited, but she said no more. That evening, the house became polite again, which was worse than anger. Carol made dinner. Nathan did not eat much. She asked whether his medication was making him irritable. He ignored the word. She suggested calling the rehabilitation center to ask about transition stress. He looked at her until she stopped speaking. Later, he found the old box in the closet of the den. It had been pushed behind winter blankets and a broken lamp. Inside were things Carol had not thrown away because she had not known they mattered. Diesel's worn training lead, a faded patch from Nathan's last working harness, and the whistle. The whistle was matte black, small enough to disappear in his palm. Diesel had known its sound better than most spoken commands. One short note meant return. Two meant hold. A long, low note meant stay close. Nathan sat at the kitchen table with the whistle in front of him. He did not blow it. The house was not ready to hear that sound. Maybe he was not either. He touched the whistle with one finger and whispered, "I'll find you. This time I won't leave." Outside, night settled hard over the yard. Carol had gone upstairs, or pretended to. Nathan remained in the kitchen with the receipt, the note, and the torn piece of collar laid in a line before him. They were small things, too small maybe, to convince anyone who did not already know what loyalty looked like when it had been betrayed. But they convinced him. Near 10 o'clock, his phone rang. The number was blocked. Nathan looked at it for 3 rings before answering. He did not speak. For a moment there was only faint static, then a man's voice came through. Calm, smooth, controlled. "You're asking old questions, Mr. Cord." Nathan's eyes moved to the note M. The voice continued. "That can make life difficult for everyone." Nathan said, "Who is this?" A soft breath, almost a laugh. "If you want the dog left alone, stop asking about the property." Nathan stood slowly. "What property?" The line went quiet. Then the man said, "Ask your wife what she signed when you couldn't hold a pen." The call ended. Nathan kept the phone against his ear for several seconds after the silence began. He did not need the man to say his name. The name had already entered the house through Agnes's fear, Carol's note, and now this warning, Marcus Vale. Nathan looked toward the stairs. Carol stood at the top landing. She had heard enough, maybe all of it. In the dim hallway light, her face looked pale and strangely old. "Nathan," she said, but he did not answer. The next morning, just after sunrise, the mail truck stopped at the end of the driveway. Nathan met it before Carol could. Among the envelopes was one from the county land office. He opened it on the porch, cold air moving through the paper in his hands. The notice was formal, stamped, and brief. It referred to a pending transaction involving the Cord family acreage outside town. The land his father had left him. The land Nathan had never wanted to sell because it was the last physical proof that his family had existed before war, hospitals, and silence. Attached was a copy of a power of attorney. At the bottom was a signature, Nathan Cord, smooth, clean, too perfect. Nathan stared at it until the paper blurred. His right hand began to ache in the cold, the same hand that had struggled to grip a spoon 3 months after surgery. He looked down at the signature again. Someone had written his name better than he could, and somehow that made it the ugliest thing he had ever seen. Nathan left before Carol came downstairs. He did not slam the door. He did not leave a note. He simply folded the county notice, the animal transfer receipt, and Carol's small blue note into the inside pocket of his camouflage jacket, then stepped out into the cold with a kind of quiet that used to mean a mission had begun. The sky was pale and hard over the road west of town. Snow had melted in the open fields but still clung to the fence shadows and the ditches. The truck's heater clicked and breathed warm air against the windshield. Nathan drove with both hands steady on the wheel, though his right hand ached from the cold and from the memory of the signature on that paper. Someone had written his name better than he could. That thought stayed with him for the first 10 miles. Diesel took over after that. Nathan kept seeing him the way Earl had described him, sitting inside a white truck, quiet, turning his head toward the road that led home, not fighting, not barking, waiting for the voice that never came. The private animal transfer facility sat 30 miles outside town behind a chain-link fence and a faded green sign that read, Pine Valley Companion Services. The name tried to sound gentle. The place did not. It was a low building with beige metal siding, a gravel lot, and narrow outdoor runs along one side. The air smelled of disinfectant, wet fur, old straw, and something sour underneath that Nathan could not name. Dogs barked from somewhere beyond the building, not wildly, but in short, exhausted bursts, as if even their fear had learned a schedule. Nathan parked near the office. Inside, fluorescent lights hummed above a counter scarred by years of keys, clipboards, and elbows. A woman at the desk looked up, saw Nathan's posture, his clean undercut silvering at the sides, his broad shoulders under the fitted green camouflage, and immediately decided he was not there to buy dog food. "Can I help you?" she asked. "I need records on a dog transferred through here last year." She blinked. "We don't release private records without authorization." Nathan placed the receipt on the counter. German Shepherd. Male. Black and tan. Name was Diesel. The woman read the paper, then looked toward the back office. Mr. Voss handles old transfers. She disappeared through a door. A minute later, a man came out. The manager, Nathan assumed, was in his late 40s, soft around the middle, with thinning sandy hair combed straight back, and a face that had learned to look bored before it learned to look honest. He wore a brown fleece vest over a gray polo shirt, khaki pants, and work boots that had never seen hard work. His name tag read G. Voss. Graham Voss smiled with his mouth only. Mr. Cord? Nathan did not answer the question. Where is my dog? Voss folded his hands on the counter. If this concerns an owner surrender, those are final once processed. Your wife signed as the responsible household party. She was not the owner. She represented herself as authorized to make the decision. Nathan's voice stayed low, and you believed her. We process a lot of cases, sir. When a spouse signs and provides documentation, Voss's smile thinned. I'd have to check the file, then check it. A flash of irritation crossed Voss's face. Mr. Cord, I understand this may be emotional. Nathan leaned slightly closer. No, you understand paperwork, so get the file. For a moment, Voss looked as if he might refuse. Then something in Nathan's stillness changed his mind. He turned, went into the back room, and returned with a folder. Nathan watched him open it. Voss did not offer the folder. He read from it. Dog was received under owner surrender due to reported aggression and inability to manage. No bite incident recorded on site. Transferred after intake to a security assessment partner. Nathan's eyes narrowed. What partner? I'm not sure I'm allowed to. My attorney will ask better than I do. Voss looked up. Nathan continued, calm and exact. My next call is to the county sheriff for a property complaint involving a registered animal transferred without owner consent. The call after that is to a lawyer regarding fraud, false reporting, and whether your facility verified ownership before taking a fee. The word lawyer did what pain, anger, and grief could not. Voss wrote something on a yellow slip. Ridgeline Protection Canine, he said. Private training facility. They assess dogs for security placement. That's where he went. When? 4 days after intake. 4 days. Diesel had been 30 miles away for 4 days. Nathan imagined driving past that road, lying in a hospital bed, waking from nightmares while Diesel sat somewhere in a cage waiting for a door to open. He took the slip. I need a copy of the file. We can email. Now. Voss looked at him, then photocopied the documents. Nathan took the copies without thanking him. He was nearly to his truck when a voice called from the side of the building. Mr. Cord? Nathan turned. A young woman stood near the employee entrance, half hidden by the corner of the wall. She was small, maybe 27, with tired shoulders and dark blonde hair pulled into a low ponytail. She wore an old denim jacket over a gray hoodie, dark blue jeans, and brown boots crusted with dried mud. Her face was pale from winter and worry, and her eyes kept moving toward the office door, as though fear had trained them to check exits. I'm Clara, she said. Clara Boone. I used to work here. Nathan studied her. You knew Diesel. Her mouth tightened at the name. I remember him. She stepped closer, then stopped, keeping distance, like someone approaching an injured animal or a dangerous truth. He wasn't aggressive, she said. Nathan did not move. Clara swallowed. The file said he was. Mrs. Cord said he growled and couldn't be handled, but when he came in, he didn't lunge, didn't snap, didn't even bark. What did he do? He lay down facing the door. The words struck Nathan quietly. Clara looked at the gravel. He wouldn't eat it first. We put food in. He just watched the door. I thought maybe he was sick or old. But he wasn't old. He was just gone somewhere inside. Nathan's jaw hardened. Why didn't you report it? I was new, Clara said. Temporary. No benefits. No one listens to the girl cleaning kennels. I asked once why a trained dog with no bite history was being marked aggressive. Voss told me paperwork was paperwork and Mrs. Cord had signed. After Ridgeline took him, I quit. The shame in her voice was not theatrical. It was worn down and ordinary. She reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a torn piece of notebook paper. I wrote down the name because I couldn't stop thinking about him. Ridgeline Protection Canine. North Logging Road, past the Pine Reserve. There's a blue gate. Nathan took the paper. Why are you telling me now? Clara looked up. Because when he left, he looked back at me like he expected someone to do the right thing. Her eyes filled, but she did not cry. And I didn't. For a moment, Nathan saw not an accomplice, not a coward, but another human being crushed under the weight of a small failure that had grown teeth. "I'm telling you now," she whispered. "I know it's late." Nathan folded the paper. "Late is better than never." Clara nodded once, and the words seemed to hurt her because they offered more mercy than she thought she deserved. Nathan drove north. The paved road gave way to gravel, then to a logging road rutted with frozen mud. Pines thickened on both sides, their dark trunks rising close together, blocking what little sun the afternoon had left. The farther he drove, the quieter the world became. At the Blue Gate, a sign hung from a steel chain, Ridgeline Protection Canine Private, property no trespassing. Nathan parked outside the gate and pressed the call button on the intercom. A voice crackled through. "State your business." "I'm here for a dog transferred from Pine Valley. German Shepherd. Named Diesel." A pause. Then the gate buzzed. Inside, the driveway led to a fenced compound set back among the pines. The buildings were darker than Pine Valley, built of metal and timber, practical and cold. Gravel yards divided kennel rows. The ground was a mixture of frozen mud, straw, and old snow. Somewhere a chain rattled, then stopped. Dogs barked as Nathan stepped out of the truck. Then, one by one, they fell silent. That silence bothered him more than the barking. A man came from the main building. He was tall, broad through the chest, maybe in his early 50s, with a shaved head, a heavy gray mustache, and pale eyes that assessed people the way some men assess livestock. He wore a black insulated jacket, dark work pants, and gloves clipped to his belt. His boots were clean despite the mud, which told Nathan he let others do the worst work. His name, stitched on his jacket, was Harlan Pike. Pike did not offer a hand. "You cord? Yes, you got paperwork?" Nathan held out the copied file. Pike glanced at it. "Dog's in evaluation. He's not yours to evaluate. He was transferred legally. That's disputed." "Dispute it with Pine Valley." "I did." Pike's expression barely moved. "Follow me." They walked past the kennel row. Nathan kept his face still, but every sound entered him. A metal latch sliding, a dog shifting weight on concrete, a low whine cut short. He did not see anyone strike an animal. He did not need to. The place carried the atmosphere of discipline without kindness, of control mistaken for order. At the far end of the row, Pike stopped. "Dog's unstable," he said. "Doesn't trust handlers. Doesn't respond clean, especially to men." Nathan looked through the chain-linked door. For a moment, he did not recognize him. The German Shepherd stood in the back corner of the kennel, body angled sideways, head low, ears up but stiff. He was still large, still built with the deep chest and strong shoulders Nathan remembered, but leaner now, the yellow of his legs dulled by mud, the black saddle along his back rough and uneven. His amber-brown eyes were open and watchful, but empty in a way Nathan had seen in men after too many nights without hope. The old black leather collar sat around his neck. The metal name tag was gone. Nathan's throat tightened. Diesel, the dog, did not move. Nathan stepped closer to the wire. "Diesel." One ear twitched, nothing more. Pike folded his arms. "Told you." Nathan ignored him. He tried the command voice, soft but clear. "Diesel, front." The dog's body tightened. Not obedience, fear. Nathan stopped. The realization entered him slowly, and then all at once. His voice, the old handler voice, the voice Diesel had once trusted without question, now sounded too much like a command from a world that had hurt him. Nathan removed the whistle from his pocket. Pike snorted. "Good luck." Nathan brought it to his lips but hesitated. The last time Diesel heard that sound, maybe it had meant safety. Or maybe someone had used commands until commands became traps. Nathan gave one short, low note. Diesel turned his head away. Not toward Nathan. Away. As if hope itself was something he could not afford to look at. Nathan lowered the whistle. Rehuck. Then Diesel did something small that made Nathan's chest ache more than any rejection could have. The dog lifted one front paw and held it slightly off the ground, just for a second. It was not a trick, not a command. Years ago, after Nathan's first minor back injury, Diesel had learned to pause like that whenever Nathan moved too fast, as if reminding him to slow down. A private habit. A quiet warning between the two of them. No trainer would have known it. No stranger would have noticed it. Diesel did not come forward, but somewhere under the fear, some part of him remembered Nathan's pain. Nathan closed his eyes briefly. "All right," he whispered. "I hear you." When he opened them, he did not call again. He turned to Pike. "Open it." "No." Nathan looked at him. Pike held his ground. "He's not cleared for direct contact." Nathan's anger rose so sharply he almost welcomed it. Anger was easier than grief, cleaner, more useful. But Diesel stood 10 feet away, watching, and Nathan knew the dog would feel every hard edge in him, so Nathan let the anger pass through without using it. Then I'll sit here. Pike gave a dry laugh. This isn't a visiting room. It is now. Nathan lowered himself slowly onto the cold ground outside the kennel. His back protested immediately. Pain flashed white across his spine. He breathed through it, placed both hands on his knees, and made himself still. Pike stared at him. You planning to freeze? I've been colder. Suit yourself. The man walked away, muttering something under his breath. Nathan stayed. He did not look directly at Diesel at first. Direct attention could feel like pressure to a wounded animal. He looked at the ground between them, at the frozen mud, at a small feather caught in the fence wire. The kennel row remained quiet. Minutes passed, then more. Nathan spoke only once. No orders, he said softly. Not today. Diesel did not move. Nathan's legs began to ache. His back burned. The cold worked through the fabric of his pants and into the old injury. He let it. Pain was not new. Waiting was. He thought of Diesel lying by the hospital bed. Of Diesel refusing to eat until Nathan's fingers moved. Of all the nights the dog had dragged him back from dreams simply by being there. Now it was Nathan's turn to be there without asking anything. A paw shifted on concrete. Nathan did not look up. Another sound. Slow. Careful. Diesel took one step, then stopped. Nathan kept his breathing even. A second step. The chain link between them rattled faintly as Diesel's nose came close to it, then pulled away. The dog's body trembled, not with aggression, but with the terrible effort of wanting to believe and being afraid of what belief might cost. Nathan slowly turned his hand palm down and placed it on the ground near the fence, not through it, not reaching, just there. Diesel watched the hand. His ears flicked back, forward, back again. Then, inch by inch, he came close enough for his nose to touch Nathan's knuckle through the wire. The contact lasted less than a second. Diesel jerked back as if the memory had startled him. Nathan did not move. His eyes burned. Good boy, he said, barely louder than breath. Diesel lowered his head again. This time, he touched Nathan's hand and stayed. The tremor moved through the dog's muzzle, through the fence, into Nathan's fingers. It felt like holding the edge of something shattered without knowing whether it could be repaired. Nathan bowed his head. I'm sorry, he whispered. I know that doesn't fix it, but I'm here. Diesel's eyes closed for one brief moment. Not sleep, not trust, but maybe the first rest from fear. Pike returned nearly 20 minutes later, his expression harder than before, as if kindness annoyed him. You done? No. You can't remove him today. Nathan looked up. I'm taking him. Pike shook his head. Dog's under a 6-month security evaluation hold. Paid by who? Client account. Name. Pike smiled without warmth. Confidential. Nathan rose carefully. The movement cost him, but he did not let his face show it. That dog was transferred under disputed authority. You keep him now, you attach yourself to the dispute. Pike looked bored again. Paperwork says we're covered. Paperwork said he was aggressive, too. Pike said nothing. Nathan stepped closer, lowering his voice. You and I both know there's no bite incident in that file. Pike's pale eyes flicked once toward Diesel. That flicker was enough. Nathan continued. So whatever you're being paid for isn't evaluation. It's storage. Pike's jaw tightened. I'll get the account file. He left them there. Diesel stayed near the fence, not touching Nathan now, but not retreating either. Nathan looked at him. The dog's amber eyes were still guarded, but they were no longer empty. When Pike came back, he held a printed account sheet and kept it just far enough away that Nathan had to take one step to receive it. Here, Pike said. Billing entity. That's all you get. Nathan read the page. The payment had not come from Carol, not directly. It was marked as a prepaid evaluation through a business account. Vale Ridge Development Group. Nathan felt the name settle into place like a lock turning. Vale. Marcus Vale. The land. The call. The note. The dog. Not separate pieces anymore. A line. Nathan folded the paper and slipped it into his jacket. Behind the fence, Diesel gave one low sound. Not a bark, not a growl, a broken breath. Nathan turned back to him. I'll be back, he said. Diesel stared at him through the wire. This time, when Nathan stepped away, the dog took one step after him. Only one. But it was enough to hurt, and enough to keep Nathan moving. Nathan did not take Diesel home. The decision cost him more than he expected. After leaving Ridge Line, he sat in the truck outside the Blue Gate for nearly 10 minutes. With both hands on the steering wheel, watching Diesel through the rearview mirror in his mind. The dog had taken one step after him, only one. But that single step had followed Nathan all the way back down the logging road, like a hand pressed against his chest. Every part of him wanted to drive straight to the house, open the door, and put Diesel back where he belonged. But the house was not safe. Not while Carol was there. Not while every clean surface in it felt like a lie. So Nathan drove to the only person within 50 miles he trusted with an animal that had been hurt by people who called control care. Ruth Calder's veterinary clinic sat on the edge of town beside a frozen field and a line of wind-bent pines. The building was small, pale blue, and plain, with a hand-painted sign shaped like a paw hanging near the door. The parking lot held 2 trucks, an old Subaru, and a rusted horse trailer. Nothing about the clinic looked polished. Everything about it looked used. That gave Nathan comfort. Ruth came out before he reached the door. She was about 60, sturdy rather than tall, with short silver hair, weathered skin, and eyes that had seen enough pain in animals not to romanticize it. She wore a light blue veterinary coat over a white t-shirt, brown khaki pants, and gray sneakers. A pen light, 2 pens, and a stethoscope sat in her coat pocket. Her face had deep lines around the mouth and eyes, but they did not make her look severe, they made her look honest. She looked first at Nathan, then past him into the truck. "You found him," she said. Nathan nodded. Not all of him. Ruth did not ask what that meant. She had lived long enough among wounded creatures to understand that recovery was rarely a complete return. Diesel sat in the back of Nathan's truck, not lying down, not standing fully either. His yellow and black coat looked dull under the winter light. Mud darkened his legs. The black saddle across his back was rough, the fur uneven where stress and poor care had thinned it. His ears were upright but tense. His amber-brown eyes moved from Ruth to the clinic door, then to Nathan's hand, then away again. He wore the old black leather collar, no tag. Ruth approached slowly and stopped several feet away. "Hey there," she said, voice low. "I'm not going to rush you." Diesel watched her without blinking. Nathan opened the truck door. Diesel did not move. He looked at the ground outside as if it might punish him for stepping onto it. Nathan felt the urge to say his name, to coax him, to command him gently the way he once had. But he remembered Diesel turning away from the whistle. He remembered Ruth was already watching him, not judging, simply waiting to see whether Nathan understood. He placed one hand flat against the truck seat and stepped back. No order, no leash tug, no demand. After nearly a minute, Diesel lowered one paw to the running board, then the other. His body trembled once as he climbed down. When his paws touched the parking lot, he stood too close to the truck, as if he needed something solid behind him. Ruth noticed. "Good," she said softly. "That's good enough." Inside, the clinic smelled of antiseptic, clean towels, kibble, and winter coats. Somewhere in the back, a small dog barked twice, then quieted. Diesel's body tightened at the sound of a metal latch clicking. Ruth saw it. She did not comment. She led them not into the main exam room, but into a quieter side room with dimmer lights, a rubber mat on the floor, and a bowl of water near the wall. She closed the door gently. No snap, no sharp click. Diesel stood near Nathan's leg, but not touching him. That hurt too, though Nathan knew it should not. Ruth sat on a low rolling stool instead of standing over the dog. "May I?" she asked Nathan. Nathan looked at Diesel. "That's up to him." Ruth gave Nathan a brief glance, and something like approval moved across her face. She held out her hand, palm down, not reaching. Diesel sniffed the air. He did not come closer. "That's all right," Ruth said. For the next 15 minutes, she examined him as slowly as winter leaving a field. She looked at his eyes, his teeth, his paws, his coat, his gait when he shifted weight. She did not force him onto the table. She did not loop a lead around his neck. When she needed to see his side, she waited until Nathan moved slightly, and Diesel turned with him. Diesel never bit, never lunged. But when a leather slip lead fell from a hook and landed softly on the floor, he folded inward so fast Nathan's breath stopped. Not a full collapse, not dramatic, just a sudden shrinking of a powerful animal into the smallest version of himself. Ruth froze. Nathan did too. Diesel's eyes fixed on the fallen lead, his ears flattened. A tremor passed through his shoulders. Ruth slowly reached down, picked up the lead, and placed it inside a drawer where he could no longer see it. Then she sat back. No one spoke for a moment. Finally, Ruth said, "This dog is not dangerous." Nathan looked at her. Her voice stayed steady. He is in pain. The words entered Nathan quietly, then broke something open. Not dangerous. In pain. So much cruelty in the world came from people naming pain as threat because threat was easier to punish. Nathan looked down at Diesel. The dog still watched the drawer. Ruth continued. He has stress responses. Strong ones. Sound sensitivity. Avoidance. Muscle tension through the neck and shoulders. He expects correction before contact. That doesn't mean he's unstable. It means someone taught his body to prepare for the worst. Nathan's throat tightened. Can he come back from it? Ruth's expression softened, but she did not lie. Some, maybe a lot. Not by being forced to become who he was. Nathan closed his hand slowly. Ruth looked directly at him. If you take him home just to get your old partner back, you'll hurt him without meaning to. Nathan absorbed that. He was my partner. I believe you, Ruth said. But right now, he doesn't need a handler. He needs a safe place. He needs predictability. He needs to choose when to come close. Nathan looked away. Choosing had been taken from Diesel, maybe from both of them. I don't have a safe place, he said. Ruth did not ask about Carol. She knew enough from the tone. You have this room tonight, she said. Nathan looked at her. Ruth shrugged. I've slept in worse places for less worthy patients. For the first time that day, Nathan almost smiled. The moment did not heal anything, but it gave him a place to stand. By late afternoon, Ruth had made a soft bed for Diesel in the quiet room. He ignored it at first and lay near the door instead, body angled toward the exit, as if even exhausted, he still believed guarding was safer than resting. Nathan sat in a chair against the wall. He did not speak much. Diesel did not sleep. Ruth brought food in a shallow bowl, then left without hovering. Diesel stared at it for several minutes. Nathan forced himself not to encourage him. Finally, Diesel leaned forward and took one mouthful, then another. Small things mattered more than large promises now. A little after 4, a young lawyer named David Park arrived at the clinic with a leather satchel, careful eyes, and snow melting on the shoulders of his gray suit. David was 32, Korean-American, lean and slightly taller than average, with neatly combed black hair and a face that made him look younger than his voice. He wore a light blue dress shirt, a simple navy tie, a gray suit, and black leather shoes that had been polished but not expensively. His expression was calm, alert, and reserved. He had the manner of a man who had learned early that speaking softly often made people reveal more. Nathan had called him from the truck after leaving Ridgeline. He had not expected David to come in person. You said the dog was injured, David said. I said he was hurt. David glanced through the window in the door at Diesel. There's a difference. Yes. David seemed to understand that answer. They met in Ruth's small office. A cramped room with filing cabinets, veterinary textbooks, and a coffee mug that read, Every animal tells the truth eventually. Nathan laid the papers on the desk. The owner surrender receipt, the Pine Valley file, the Ridgeline account sheet, the county notice, the power of attorney. David did not react dramatically. He arranged each document in a careful line and began reading. Ruth stood near the door, arms folded. After several minutes, David tapped the power of attorney. This is the larger problem. Larger than my dog? Legally? Yes. Emotionally, I'm not going to insult you by ranking them. Nathan appreciated that. David continued. This document gives authority to manage, transfer, or encumber real property. That includes land. It appears to have been used to initiate a transaction involving your family acreage. I never signed it. David looked at the signature. No, he said quietly. I don't think you did. Nathan watched him. David pulled a pen from his inside jacket pocket and pointed. People think forged signatures look messy. Often they look too clean, too practiced. Whoever did this was copying an idea of your signature, not the way your injured hand actually moved. Nathan looked at his right hand. Even now, cold made the fingers stiff. Some mornings, the first attempt to write his name came out broken, uneven, humiliating. The signature on the page had no hesitation at all. It was beautiful. That made it obscene. David asked, Do you have medical records showing your condition at the time this was notarized? Yes. Good. We'll need them. Nathan heard the word we and looked up. David's face remained professional. My father was a Marine, David said after a moment. He spent 3 years fighting paperwork after he came home. Lost more sleep to forms than to war, according to him. I don't do miracles, Mr. Cord. But I do know how to make a paper trail answer questions. Nathan looked back at the documents. What will it cost? First consult is free, and after that, David's mouth tightened. There's a veterans legal support fund I work with. We'll start there. Nathan almost refused. Pride rose automatically, old and useless. Then he looked through the small window at Diesel, lying awake by the door. Fine, he said. David nodded as if he understood what that word had cost. Rehuck. As David opened the Ridgeline account sheet again, Diesel suddenly lifted his head inside the quiet room. No one had touched him, no sound had changed. But the dog rose slowly, stiffly, and faced the office door. A low rumble moved through his chest, not loud, not wild. Ruth opened the office door carefully. Diesel's eyes were fixed on the satchel David had placed beside the desk. David followed the dog's gaze and frowned. This? He lifted the satchel slightly. Diesel's growl deepened. Nathan stood. What's in it? David opened the satchel and removed a large manila envelope. I picked this up from a contact at the county recorder's office. Copy of the preliminary land file. It was delivered through Vale Ridge Development's local office. The name made the room colder. Ruth looked at Diesel. The dog was not staring at the paper. He was staring at the envelope itself. Nathan stepped closer and caught it then, faint but distinct beneath paper and dust. Mint tobacco, leather. A sharp, expensive cologne. Not enough for a human memory to build a case. Enough for a dog's body to remember a room, a hand, a night. Diesel backed up one step. His growl broke into a small, involuntary sound. Nathan did not reach for him. He crouched slowly, though pain flared in his back. I know, he said quietly. I know you remember. David looked from Diesel to Nathan. This just became more than bad paperwork. It already was, Nathan said. David folded the envelope back into the satchel with care, as though it had become evidence even before the law named it so. That evening, David made 2 calls. The first was to request Nathan's hospital and rehabilitation records for the date the power of attorney had supposedly been signed. The second was to a woman named Dr. Helen Ward. Nathan knew the name before David explained. Helen Ward had been his therapist at the Military Rehabilitation Center. She arrived by video call on David's tablet just after dusk. Helen was 58, with short silver hair, clear eyes, and a composed face that did not confuse gentleness with softness. She wore a simple brown blazer over a white blouse, and behind her was an office lined with books on trauma, military transition, and grief. She had the steady presence of someone who had listened to men confess things they could not say to their families. Nathan, she said. Doctor, you look tired. I am. Are you sleeping? No, that was not a trick question. He almost smiled. David explained the situation briefly. The disputed documents, Carol's suggestion that Nathan was unstable, the possibility that his trauma history could be used to undermine him. Helen listened without interrupting. Then she said Nathan has documented PTSD symptoms, nightmares, survivor's guilt, hypervigilance, sleep disturbance. None of that equals cognitive incapacity. None of that means he cannot identify fraud, remember recent events, or understand his legal interests. Nathan looked away from the tablet. Helen's voice softened. Pain is not the same thing as delusion, Nathan. The sentence landed somewhere he had not realized needed defending. For days, maybe years, a part of him had feared that because he was wounded, anything he believed could be questioned. Carol had found that fear and pressed on it. Helen did not remove the fear. She named the lie inside it. David said, Would you be willing to provide a statement if needed? Yes, Helen said. Within professional limits. I will not make him sound uninjured. He is injured. But being injured is not the same as being unreliable. After the call ended, Nathan sat quietly. Ruth left him alone for a while. The clinic darkened outside the windows. Snow began again, soft and sparse, drifting past the parking lot lights. At 3:17 in the morning, Nathan woke in the chair. He had not meant to sleep. The dream still had him by the throat. Static. Smoke. A voice calling through distance. The old order leaving his mouth before he could stop it. Pull back. He opened his eyes, breath ragged. Across the room, Diesel was awake too. The dog's legs twitched against the blanket. His eyes were open but unfocused, trapped somewhere inside his own dark place. Nathan did not say his name. He did not command. He lowered his hands slowly to the floor beside the chair. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Diesel rose. Not smoothly, not confidently. He came low, cautious, every step a negotiation with fear. He stopped once when the building creaked, started again when Nathan stayed still. At last, Diesel lowered himself beside the chair. Not against Nathan, Near him. Close enough that Nathan could feel the warmth of his breath across his fingers. Nathan looked down. Diesel's eyes were open. So were his. Neither of them slept again for a long time. But neither of them was alone. By morning, the clinic smelled of coffee and clean gauze. David arrived early with fresh documents and a more serious expression than the night before. "We need the notary," he said. Nathan stood carefully. "Who?" "Mara Ellison. Her stamp is on the power of attorney. She's local. Part-time notary, part-time clerk. I called once before coming here. She didn't want to talk. Did she say why?" David opened his phone and played the brief voicemail she had left after missing his call. A woman's voice came through, thin with fear and strain. "I didn't know Mr. Cord wasn't there that day." A pause. Then the line clicked dead. Nathan looked through the office window at Diesel. The dog was watching him now. Not empty, not healed. Watching. David lowered the phone. "That sentence," he said, "is either a mistake," Nathan finished it, "or the first honest thing anyone in that room has said." Diesel's ears lifted slightly at the sound of Nathan's voice. Outside, snow moved past the glass like ash from a fire that had not gone out. Nathan picked up the file. "Then we find out which." By the time the petition reached David Park's office, Carol had already changed the story. She was no longer the woman who had signed Diesel away. She was the wife who had survived 2 years alone. She was the woman who had tried to manage a dangerous dog, a damaged house, and a husband whose mind, according to the careful language of the filing, might no longer be steady enough to manage his own affairs. Nathan read the petition in silence. David's office was small, located above a bakery on Main Street, with 2 narrow windows overlooking the town square. The room smelled faintly of paper, coffee, and warm bread from downstairs. Law books lined one wall, most of them secondhand. A gray metal filing cabinet stood beside David's desk. Nothing in the office looked expensive, but everything looked orderly. David sat across from Nathan in his gray suit, light blue shirt and navy tie, his black hair combed neatly, his expression calm but tighter than usual. "She is not asking the court to declare you incompetent," David said. "Not yet. She is asking for a temporary review of your capacity to manage disputed property and your ability to safely keep Diesel." Nathan looked at the paper. "Because of my trauma. Because she knows it will sound reasonable to people who don't know you." Diesel lay on a blanket near Nathan's chair. Ruth had allowed him to leave the clinic only under strict conditions. No return to Carol's house, no crowds unless necessary, no raised voices, no leash corrections, no forcing contact. Diesel still wore the old black leather collar without the name tag. His yellow and black coat had been brushed clean, but the dullness had not fully left it. He rested with his body angled toward the door, ears half raised, eyes watching the office as if every room still required a guard. Nathan lowered the paper. "She's making him the proof against me," David nodded. "She is making both of you the proof. Diesel's file says reported aggression. Your file says PTSD. She is trying to make the court see a dangerous dog beside an unstable man." Nathan felt the words land. Dangerous dog, unstable man. 2 labels clean enough for strangers to believe. Before he could answer, footsteps sounded in the hallway outside the office. David glanced toward the door. "That will be Ruth." Ruth Calder entered without ceremony, carrying a folder under one arm and a paper cup of coffee in the other. Her short silver hair was wind-tossed, her light blue veterinary coat open over her white t-shirt, brown khaki pants, and gray sneakers. She looked like someone who had left 3 patients waiting and did not regret choosing the 4th. Diesel lifted his head. Ruth stopped just inside the door. "Morning, Diesel." His tail did not wag, but his eyes softened by a fraction. For Ruth, that was enough. She looked at Nathan. "You look terrible. Good morning to you too. Did you sleep?" "No." "Then don't talk too much in court. Tired men sound angrier than they are." David almost smiled. Nathan did not. Ruth set her folder on the desk. "My notes. Behavior observations. No bite incident. No evidence he's aggressive by temperament. Strong fear responses, yes. Avoidance, yes. Hypervigilance, yes. But he did not attempt to attack during exam, handling, feeding, or overnight observation." David opened the folder. "This helps." "It should do more than help," Ruth said. "It should stop people from calling pain a character flaw." Nathan looked down at Diesel. The dog was watching him now, not Ruth, as if he understood tone, if not words. By noon, the temporary civil hearing had been moved up because of the property filing. The courthouse sat at the north end of town, a brick building with a white cupola and old stone steps cleared of snow. Nathan paused at the bottom before climbing. Diesel stood beside him. The dog's body was rigid, but he did not retreat. Nathan kept the leash loose, exactly as Ruth had instructed. No pressure, no correction, just connection. You don't have to come in, Nathan murmured. Diesel looked up at him. Not healed, not confident, but present. Nathan climbed the steps. Inside the hearing room, Carol sat at the opposite table. She wore the same cream turtleneck sweater, pale gray slacks, and brown flats. Her light brown hair was brushed smooth around her face. She looked smaller than she had in the house, almost fragile under the fluorescent light. But Nathan had begun to understand that Carol's softness was not weakness. It was a method. Beside her sat Marcus Vale. It was the first time Nathan saw him clearly. Marcus was about 48, nearly 6 feet tall, with a lean, polished build and a face that would have looked trustworthy to anyone who mistook symmetry for goodness. His dark brown hair was combed back neatly. He wore a white dress shirt, a navy blazer, black slacks, and shining brown leather shoes. A silver ring with a faint scratch along its face sat on one hand. His smile was mild, controlled, and almost sympathetic. He looked nothing like a villain. That made Nathan dislike him more. Marcus turned as Nathan entered, and his eyes moved first to Diesel. The reaction lasted less than a second, but Diesel saw it. The dog stopped. A low vibration moved through his chest, so quiet only Nathan felt it through the leash. Nathan did not tighten the lead. He lowered his hand until his fingers brushed Diesel's shoulder. "Easy," he whispered. Marcus's smile returned. "Mr. Cord," he said politely. "I'm sorry we're meeting under these circumstances." Nathan said nothing. Marcus looked at Diesel again. "I hope everyone stays calm today." It was a perfect sentence, reasonable. Concerned, poisoned. The hearing officer, a gray-haired woman named Judge Elaine Porter, entered moments later. She was in her early 60s, narrow-faced, with reading glasses on a chain, and the tired authority of someone who had heard every version of people hurting one another and calling it necessity. She wore a plain black robe, her silver hair pinned tightly at the back of her head. "Let's proceed," she said. Carol's attorney spoke first, a neat man with a careful voice. He framed the case gently. A wife overwhelmed by a long medical absence, a trained dog that became difficult to manage, a veteran struggling after severe injury, and a family property transaction now complicated by confusion and emotional distress. Nathan listened. Each sentence had enough truth in it to be dangerous. Carol had been alone. Diesel had been trained. Nathan was injured. There was emotional distress. Marcus spoke only when asked, and when he did, his voice stayed low and regretful. Carol was trying to survive in a house where neither her husband nor the dog truly came back to her, he said. Nathan's hand closed on the edge of the table. David leaned slightly toward him. "Don't give them what they want," he murmured. Nathan breathed once, then again. Marcus continued, "I helped with paperwork where I could. Nothing more." Mrs. Cord was under extraordinary pressure. Carol lowered her eyes at the right moment. Nathan could feel the room moving toward her, not fully, but enough. Sympathy was a quiet current. Once it started flowing, facts had to swim harder. Then Ruth testified. She did not dramatize. She did not accuse. She simply described Diesel as she had found him. "No bite incident occurred at my clinic. He displayed fear responses, not predatory or uncontrolled aggression. He avoided contact when stressed. He responded to space and calm handling. In my professional opinion, labeling this dog dangerous based only on a surrender note is irresponsible," Carol's attorney asked. "But he growled in your clinic?" Ruth looked at him over her glasses. "So do people, counselor, usually when they're scared." A few people in the room shifted. Judge Porter made a note. Clara Boone testified next. She looked terrified. Clara wore the same denim jacket and gray hoodie, her dark blonde ponytail tucked behind one shoulder, her boots clean but still worn at the seams. She was small in the witness chair, hands gripping each other tightly, eyes flicking once toward Marcus and away. David's questions were gentle. "Did Diesel attack anyone at Pine Valley?" "No." "Did you personally observe aggressive behavior?" "No." "What did you observe?" Clara swallowed. "He watched the door. He wouldn't eat at first. He seemed shut down. The file said aggressive, but I never saw that." Carol stared at the table. Marcus stared at Clara. That was worse. Agnes came after. She moved slowly with a cane Nathan had never seen her use before. Her moss-green cardigan peeked beneath her gray coat. and her white hair was pinned low at the back of her head. She looked frightened but determined, the way decent people look when truth has taken too long to leave their mouth. Her trail camera video was entered as limited evidence. The image was blurry. Rain streaked the lens. It did not prove everything, but it proved enough to disturb the clean story Carol had told. A white truck, a late hour, Carol in the yard, a tall man in dark clothing, Diesel being taken toward the shed, not vanishing into the woods. Carol's attorney objected to the quality. Judge Porter allowed it for context, not conclusion. Nathan could live with that. Context was where truth often began. Then David called Dr. Helen Ward by video. Helen appeared on the courtroom screen wearing her brown blazer and white blouse, her silver hair neat, her expression composed. She spoke with the steady care of someone accustomed to separating wound from weakness. Yes, she said, Mr. Cord has documented PTSD symptoms, nightmares, hypervigilance, survivor's guilt. But in my professional opinion, those symptoms do not indicate delusion, cognitive incapacity, or inability to understand legal matters. Carol looked up sharply. Helen continued, a traumatized person can still tell the truth. Pain does not make someone unreliable by default. Nathan did not look at Carol. He looked at Diesel. The dog had lowered his head onto his paws, but his eyes remained open. Re-Huck. During a short recess, David received an enlarged still image from Agnes's trail camera on his phone. He did not react at first. He only turned the screen slightly toward Nathan beneath the table. The image was grainy, smeared by rain, almost useless. Almost. Near the dark shape of the man beside Carol, one hand had caught the camera's infrared glare. On one finger, a small pale crescent flashed. A ring. Silver. Nathan's eyes moved across the room. Marcus stood near the window, speaking softly to Carol. His right hand rested against the back of a chair. The scratched silver ring caught the courthouse light. Diesel lifted his head at the same moment. Not barking, not growling, just watching the hand. For 1 second, Nathan felt something larger than evidence pass through the room. Not proof, recognition. David locked his phone and slid it away. Not enough by itself, he said quietly. Nathan's voice was just as quiet. No, but he knows. David looked at Diesel, then at Marcus. Yes, he said. He does. After the recess, David turned to the notary issue. Mara Ellison had tried not to come. The court had not forced her yet. But David's request and the pressure of the disputed document had brought her to the hallway. She stood near the rear doors, clutching a black folder to her chest, as if it could shield her from everyone she had disappointed. Mara was about 40, average height, with short brown hair cut practically around a tired face. She wore a plain white blouse under a gray cardigan, black slacks, and low black shoes. There were shadows beneath her eyes, and her skin had the pale, drawn look of someone who had spent several nights arguing with her conscience and losing. David approached her during the second break. Nathan stayed back. He could see the conversation through the open door but not hear all of it. Mara shook her head once. David spoke quietly. She said something sharp, then covered her mouth. Marcus turned from across the room. Mara saw him looking. Her face went gray. David returned alone. She's scared, he said. Of Marcus? Of losing her commission. Her job. Maybe more. She says she didn't forge anything. Nathan watched Mara through the doorway. What did she do? David's expression hardened. She looked away. When the hearing resumed, Mara was not officially called as a witness yet. But Judge Porter agreed to review a written proffer from David stating that the notary process may have been defective. That was enough to shift the room. Not enough to win. Enough to make the paper trail start bleeding. Carol felt it. Nathan saw the change. Her softness frayed. When she finally spoke, she did not sound like a frightened wife. She sounded tired, angry, and cornered. You all talk like I had choices, she said. Like I wasn't living in that house with a dog that stared at the door for 2 years. Like I wasn't already widowed by a man who was still breathing. Nathan closed his eyes briefly. Carol's voice sharpened. And you. She looked directly at him now. You sit there like loyalty is sacred. Like you never left anyone behind. The room went silent. David whispered, Nathan. But Carol kept going. You called his name in your sleep for 2 years. Over and over. I heard it through hospital curtains. I heard you begging someone to hold on. So don't stand there and pretend you don't know what it means to abandon someone who trusted you. The words did not strike Nathan. They opened him. The hearing room vanished. For a second there was only smoke, static, heat, and the voice of a man Nathan could not reach. A choice made under fire. 4 men alive because of it. 1 man gone because of it. A decision that had been correct in every report and unforgivable in every dream. His hand began to tremble. Carol saw it. So did Marcus. Nathan hated that. Diesel rose. Slowly, no bark, no lunge. No dramatic display. He simply stood, stepped close to Nathan's chair, and placed his head on Nathan's knee. The weight was light. It might as well have been an anchor. Nathan looked down. Diesel did not look at Carol. He did not look at Marcus. He looked up at Nathan with amber brown eyes, still shadowed by fear, but present. Here Nathan placed his hand on Diesel's head. The tremor in his fingers did not vanish, but it no longer owned him. He looked at Carol. I have lived with that decision every day, he said. You know that because you heard me break in my sleep. Carol's face flickered. Nathan continued, voice low but clear. But my pain does not give you the right to lie. It does not give you the right to sign away my dog. It does not give you the right to put my name on papers I never touched. Carol looked away first. Marcus did not. Judge Porter called the room back to order. But something had changed. Carol had used Nathan's wound against him. Instead of destroying him, it had shown everyone where she was willing to strike. By the end of the hearing, Judge Porter did not make a final ruling. She did something more careful. She issued a temporary order preventing further action on the land transaction pending review of the power of attorney. She allowed Diesel to remain in Nathan's temporary care under veterinary supervision, noting that no verified bite incident had been presented. She requested medical records, notary records, and additional documentation from Pine Valley and Ridgeline. It was not victory, not yet, but it was a door held open. Outside the courthouse, the sky had darkened. Carol left quickly with her attorney. Marcus lingered near the steps. He buttoned his navy blazer against the cold and looked at Nathan with the same mild smile. You're putting yourself through a lot for a dog, he said. Diesel stood beside Nathan, still but alert. Nathan did not move closer. He remembered you. Marcus's smile did not change, but his eyes did. Only for a second. Enough. I hope you get the help you need, Mr. Cord. Nathan looked at the scratched ring on Marcus' hand. I am. David stepped beside Nathan before either man could say more. Marcus walked away. That evening, Nathan did not return to Carol's house to stay. He went back only to collect clothes, medical papers, and the box of Diesel's old things. Ruth had arranged for him to use the small recovery room at the clinic one more night, and David had offered to help find temporary lodging. Carol was not home when Nathan arrived. The house smelled colder than before. Diesel entered cautiously. He crossed the threshold and stopped. His body lowered, not in obedience but memory. Nathan kept the leash loose and waited. You don't have to, he said. Diesel took one step, then another. He did not go toward the hallway, or the shed, or the back door. He went into the kitchen. Nathan followed. The room was dim in the early evening light. The old oak table stood where it always had. Its polished surface reflected the gray window. Diesel stopped beneath it. For the first time since being found, his posture changed from fear to purpose. He lowered his head and sniffed along the base of one table leg, then moved to the crossbar beneath it. His ears came forward. His breathing quickened. Nathan crouched slowly, pain tightening through his back. What is it? Diesel lifted one paw and scratched gently at a narrow seam beneath the table. Once, then again. Not frantic, not afraid. Certain. Nathan reached under the edge and felt a small strip of loose wood fitted beneath the frame, nearly invisible unless someone knew where to touch. Diesel pressed closer, eyes fixed on Nathan's hand. The old house creaked around them. For one suspended moment, Nathan had the terrible sense that Diesel was not searching for something new. He was bringing Nathan back to the exact place where the truth had fallen. Diesel's paw touched the underside of the old kitchen table again. Not hard. Not frantic. Just once, then a pause, then once more. Nathan stayed crouched beside him, one hand braced on the floor, his back tightening in protest. The house around them was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that came after people had run out of lies, but before truth had found language. Diesel stood close to the table leg, his yellow and black body rigid with purpose. His ears were forward. His amber-brown eyes did not look frightened now. They looked fixed on something old, something his body remembered, even if no human had been willing to name it. Nathan slid his fingers beneath the wooden crossbar. There was a narrow strip of loose wood, fitted under the table's lower frame. It had been polished over, almost invisible unless someone knew where to search. Nathan worked one finger under the edge and pulled gently. The strip shifted, then came free with a soft crack. Something small dropped into his palm. Metal, cold, oval, Nathan knew before he turned it over. The tag was scratched, darkened at the edges, but the engraving remained clear. Diesel. For several seconds, Nathan could not move. The kitchen dimmed around him. The walls, the polished counters, the empty bowl space near the back door, Carol's erased version of the house, all of it seemed to fall away. In his hand lay the thing that should have been on Diesel's collar the day Nathan came home. Diesel lowered his head and sniffed the tag. Then he exhaled. It was not a whine, not relief, just a tired breath, as if the dog had been holding that memory inside his body for longer than any living thing should have to. Nathan closed his fingers around the tag. He did not imagine Diesel hiding it. Diesel was not a detective, not a person setting clues for court. The truth was simpler and crueler. It had fallen here. During the struggle. Nathan could see it now, not perfectly, but enough. Diesel standing between Carol, Marcus, and the back door. Marcus reaching for the collar. Diesel backing under the table, not attacking, just resisting. A hand jerking the leather. Metal catching under the frame. The tag snapping loose and dropping into the dark seam beneath the wood. Then the shed. Then the truck. Then the long road away from home. Nathan sat back on the kitchen floor, the tag in one hand, Diesel's head near his shoulder. "You never left," he whispered. Diesel did not understand the words, but he leaned closer. That was enough. Later, while packing the remaining medical files from a box Carol had not taken, Nathan found a folded hospital form tucked between old discharge papers. It was not legal paperwork, not a contract, not a title deed. It was a plain scrap of paper with his own handwriting on it, uneven from pain medication and fear. "Take care of him until I come home." Nathan remembered writing it before the first spinal surgery. He had not asked Carol to protect the land. He had not asked her to manage his name or preserve his pride. He had only asked her to take care of Diesel. The one promise he had needed most had been the one she broke. When David Parks saw the tag and the note the next morning, he did not pretend they were enough by themselves. David was too honest for that. He sat across from Nathan in his small office above the bakery, wearing his gray suit, light blue shirt, and navy tie, his black hair neatly combed despite the early hour. The smell of coffee and warm bread rose faintly through the floorboards. "The tag matters," David said. "Emotionally, it matters a great deal. Legally, it supports location and timing if we combine it with the other evidence." Nathan nodded. He had stopped needing one object to prove everything. That had been Marcus's mistake. He thought truth had to be one large thing to be dangerous. In real life, truth often arrived as small objects people forgot to destroy. A blurry trail camera file, a transfer receipt, a company payment, a missing tag, a hospital record, a notary afraid of her own stamp. David spread the documents across the desk. Mara Ellison came in shortly after, carrying a black folder against her chest. She looked smaller than she had in the courthouse. Her short brown hair was tucked behind one ear, her gray cardigan buttoned wrong at the middle. Fear had not left her, but something heavier had replaced panic, resolve. "I can't say who signed it," Mara said quietly, "but I can say Mr. Cord wasn't there." David did not rush her. Mara swallowed. Marcus brought the papers. Carol was with him. He said Nathan had already signed at home because travel was impossible. He said I was only confirming what everyone already understood. Nathan watched her. "Did you believe him?" Mara's eyes filled, but she did not cry. "I wanted to." "That's worse, isn't it?" Nathan said nothing. Mara looked down at the folder. "I didn't forge the signature, but I let the room pretend the rules didn't matter. I looked away because I was tired, scared, and needed the work." Her voice broke. "I'm sorry." Nathan had imagined that apology many times from many people. Carol, Marcus, Voss, Pike, Earl, Agnes, himself. When it finally came from Mara, it did not fix anything, but it made the air less poisoned. David took her written statement and added it to the file. The final hearing was not dramatic. No one shouted. No one confessed in a sweeping scene. There were no handcuffs, no chase, no sudden collapse of evil under the weight of righteousness. There was only a small courtroom, a gray morning, a judge with tired eyes, and a table full of ordinary paper. Ruth testified again, clear and unshaken. Diesel's file contained no verified bite incident. His fear responses did not make him inherently dangerous. Dr. Helen Ward provided a written statement confirming Nathan's trauma symptoms without questioning his capacity. Agnes's trail camera remained imperfect, but useful. Clara Boone's statement confirmed Diesel had arrived at Pine Valley, shut down, not aggressive. Mara's statement broke the clean surface of the power of attorney, and David connected the payment from Vale Ridge Development Group to the extended hold at Ridgeline Protection Canine. Marcus Vale sat beside Carol in his navy blazer, white shirt, black slacks, polished brown shoes, and scratched silver ring. His expression remained controlled, but the pleasant mask no longer fit as smoothly. Every time David added a document, Marcus's fingers touched the ring. Carol looked older. She wore the same cream turtleneck and pale gray slacks, but there was no softness left in her face now, only exhaustion, fear, and a faint disbelief that the version of herself she had built had not survived contact with evidence. Judge Elaine Porter reviewed the filings with care. At last, she ruled that the land transaction could not proceed under the disputed power of attorney. The document would be referred for further civil and possible criminal review. The court would not validate a transaction built on a notarization, now admitted to be defective, and a signature contradicted by medical records. It was not a full ending. It was not punishment. But it stopped the theft from becoming history. Marcus did not look at Nathan when the ruling came. Carol did. For a moment, Nathan thought she might say something. Perhaps not an apology. Perhaps only his name. Instead, she lowered her eyes. That was her final answer. Outside the courthouse, snow fell lightly. Marcus left through the side entrance with his attorney. Carol stood near the steps with a small suitcase at her feet. She looked toward Nathan once, then toward Diesel. The dog stood beside Nathan, calm but watchful, his black leather collar now carrying the restored metal tag. Carol's mouth trembled when she saw it. Nathan expected anger to rise. It did not. Only grief, she said. I was alone. Nathan looked at her for a long moment. I know. Her eyes lifted. He continued, but you made sure he was alone too. Carol's face folded inward. She did not answer. A rideshare car pulled up at the curb. She took her suitcase, got in, and left town without one final speech. The quiet after her departure felt less like victory than weather clearing after a long storm. The damage remained. The branches were still broken, but at least the wind had stopped lying about where it had blown. Huck. At the county land office 2 weeks later, Nathan sat with a pen in his hand and stared at his own name printed at the bottom of a new document. This time, no one had written it for him. This time, no one had borrowed his absence. The land was legally his again, but keeping it would mean more hearings, back taxes, repair costs, and years of living inside the place where Diesel had been taken. David had found a buyer willing to wait until the dispute cleared. A fair buyer, not Marcus, not a developer. Nathan's hand hovered above the line. For a second, his fingers trembled, not from weakness, from the weight of choice. Then Diesel, lying beside his chair, placed one paw gently over Nathan's boot. Nathan looked down. The dog did not push, did not beg, did not command. He simply stayed. Nathan signed. The signature was uneven, a little broken, absolutely his. David watched quietly from across the table. I'm sorry we couldn't save the land, he said. Nathan capped the pen. We did. David looked at him. Nathan touched the signed page. They took it with a lie. I let it go with the truth. That's different. David said nothing for a moment. Then he nodded. Yes, he said. It is. The house by the lake was small. Smaller than the old farmhouse. Smaller than the life Nathan had once imagined returning to. It sat at the end of a narrow gravel road where pine trees leaned toward the water and mist rose each morning like breath from the earth. The exterior paint was weathered blue. The porch sagged slightly on one side. The kitchen window looked out over the lake, which held the winter sky in pale silver silence. There was a narrow bed for Nathan, a thick rug by the stove for Diesel, a small wooden table, 2 chairs, a coffee maker that rattled before it worked, and enough peace to feel unfamiliar. The first week was not easy. Diesel still flinched when keys dropped. Nathan still woke before dawn with his heart racing. Some nights Diesel slept by the door instead of the rug. Some mornings Nathan sat with coffee in both hands and felt the old guilt crawl back into the room without knocking. Healing did not arrive like sunlight. It came more like thaw, slow, uneven, quiet. Sometimes invisible until one day water moved where ice had been. One afternoon, a letter arrived with no return address Nathan recognized. Inside was a note written in careful handwriting from the widow of the teammate Nathan had lost years ago. Nathan read the first line standing at the kitchen counter. Then he sat down. Her husband, she wrote, had once told her that if anything happened, Cord would bring the others home. He had trusted Nathan to make the hard call. He had known Nathan would blame himself. But he had also known Nathan would do what needed to be done. Nathan read the letter once, then again, then a third time, though the words blurred before he finished. Diesel lay beneath the table, head on his paws, the tag on his collar, catching a small line of afternoon light. Nathan did not hide his tears. There was no one left in the house who would use them against him. That night, Nathan woke once before dawn. Not at 3:17, at 4:06. The room was dark blue with early morning. For a moment, he did not understand why the difference mattered. Then he looked at the clock again and felt something loosen inside his chest. Diesel was asleep on the rug, truly asleep. His body rested on one side, legs loose, breathing deep and even, not guarding the door, not watching the windows, not waiting for the next command. Nathan lowered his hand from the bed. Diesel did not wake. For once, Nathan let him sleep. Morning came softly. Nathan stood in the small kitchen wearing the same clean green camouflage clothes, the sleeves buttoned, the fit neat as always. The old discipline remained, but it no longer looked like armor. It looked like a habit that had learned gentleness. Coffee brewed with a low sputter. Outside, thin sunlight touched the lake. Diesel moved quietly under the table and settled at Nathan's feet. His yellow and black coat had begun to shine again. Not fully, not like before, but enough. His amber eyes lifted briefly to Nathan, then softened. Nathan looked down at him. "We're still here, buddy." Diesel rested his muzzle across Nathan's boot. No grand answer, no miracle. Just warmth, weight, breath. Nathan looked out at the water and held his coffee between both hands. The world had not become fair. Carol's leaving had not erased betrayal. The court's order had not restored every year stolen. The sale of the land had not returned Nathan's father, his old home, or the man from the radio in his dreams. But the name on Diesel's tag was back where it belonged. The name on the final document had been his own. And in the small house by the lake, when darkness came again, there were no locked sheds, no hidden papers, no polished rooms trying to erase the past. Only a man, a dog, a quiet morning, and enough light to begin. The night watchman finally rested, not because the world no longer held pain, but because this time he did not have to guard it alone. Nathan did not get everything back. He lost the house he once knew, the land he thought would always carry his name, and the life he believed was waiting for him. But he found something quieter and stronger. The right to tell the truth, the courage to let go, and a loyal friend still breathing beside him. Sometimes healing does not mean returning to the place where everything broke. Sometimes it means finding a small, honest corner of the world where your heart can finally rest. May you find that kind of peace in your own life, especially if you are carrying something no one else can see. And if this story touched you, share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us what Diesel and Nathan's journey made you feel, and subscribe for more stories of loyalty, healing, and second chances.